Guy says, well, the frog support pad crippled the horse. It's not the frog support pad. It's the fact that you put too much DIM in and the horse can't get away from that excess pressure on the frog. And it might take a day or two, but that horse is probably going to be sore, especially putting a wedge pad on. We're putting more pressure on the heels. If you have too much DIM, a wedge pad, that horse is constantly putting more pressure on the caudal half of the foot. It's going to cause lameness. So the way to prevent that is use less DIM for one, and number two, we have to bear weight on the horse's foot before the DIM sets up, because that sole always flexes when it bears weight. So we want to push out any excess DIM and let that foot fully bear weight before the DIM sets up. Okay? And that's where we end up with problems. Is we have too much DIM in, it sets up, then we put the foot down, and that constant pressure is going to cause lameness, just like snow would or excess mud or rocks or anything else in the hoof capsule. So that's something to keep in mind. Second thing is we need something to disinfect the frog underneath the dill and pressure material. I like to use the Allen's copper sulfate, and I like to use the FootPro clay and put it down in the commissures of the frog, down in the sulci, and that keeps everything sterile environment until we come back. This clay, it'll stay in the whole shoeing cycle. It'll stay in 8 weeks, and it just stays down in the sulci, and it just helps keep everything fresh and disinfected. If you don't use a disinfectant like the copper sulfate and the CS clay, you will get a thrushy frog. It might not be the first shoeing, but 2 or 3 shoeings down the road, that frog will get thrushy and it'll hold moisture. But if you put this prior to every time, it's a clean, sterile environment when you come back every time. So it's critical. This is fast and easy to put on, and it's a critical step. But it's something I do anytime I pour with Equipack, any kind of pour, any kind of DIM. I always put the clay and the copper sulfate underneath it, and it keeps the foot beautiful. But that's the way to prevent problems. So too much DIM and having a disinfected foot with the clay is the 2 things that I really watch out for when I'm applying this. So I go in, I put a healthy amount down in the commissures. Now I generally put a little dab in the central sulcus. The foot model doesn't have much of a central sulcus, but if I got a deep central sulcus, I'll go in and do that as well there. And one added step is you can go in with the Allen's copper sulfate or copper sulfate granules, and you can just put those in prior to and then put the clay on top of the copper sulfate. And that also works great. And that's just a little added extra insurance on keeping everything sterile.